Hi everyone and welcome to MLS 5331. I'm your instructor Art Aguirre. You can call me Art, Dr. Aguirre, Dr. A, any of those that you feel comfortable with. I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about myself, tell you about the course. So let's go ahead and get started. So I just gave you all my name, but in terms of my online office hours, I'm going to have those Wednesdays from 1:30 to 4 and on Thursdays from 3:30 to 4:30. On both days, I'll be available via Skype, so that's my Skype username. You just type in that email address, and then you can add me from there, and we can do a chat, or we can hop on and do like a video call as well. The other thing I want to do to kind of encourage, to give you more of an opportunity to meet with me. I know there are some folks who don't like kind of just logging into Skype, or they're not accustomed to it. So on Thursdays, I will have a link up on Blackboard for Thursdays with the Zoom link. So that way I'll just have my Zoom session on, and if anybody decides they want to hop onto Zoom during my office hours, you'll have that link available to you all. And lastly, there's my email address. I give that to you all because I prefer to get all our correspondence through the UTEP email address. It's just a lot easier for me to get those and respond as quickly as possible versus having to log into Blackboard and respond to messages that way. So if you need to reach out to me, you can do it during my office hours. You can send me an email, and I'm happy to give you my cell phone number as well in case you want to text me or call me. But those are all the ways that you can get a hold of me outside of, essentially don't use the messaging function in Blackboard. So in terms of the course description, what I've tried to do in building this course over the last few years is make it a real combination of my knowledge and expertise in leadership, but also my own background in communication. All three of my degrees are in communication. And so I tried to bring those together as best I can, both the theory of communication, but as well as the strategy and life application aspects of it. And you can kind of see that as we get further along into the semester. In terms of the required recommended materials, the only two books that we'll be using this semester are Stephen Denning's The Secret Language of Leadership and Charlene Lee's The Engaged Leader. There are a few other resources that you'll need, but everything else will be available to you all on Blackboard. So those are the only two books that you need to purchase. Okay, so in terms of the other ins and outs of the class, Blackboard is what we're going to be using for everything. All of our discussion posts, all of the information I'll be giving to you all, additional articles. You'll be submitting all of your assignments through Blackboard. So everything that we do is going to be on Blackboard. The only other exceptions is usually when someone has an issue uploading a document or something to Blackboard, they'll usually email that to me. But other than that, Blackboard is going to be essentially where we live, where this class lives. In terms of participation, I really haven't had any issues since I've been in this program with any of the students participating, so I don't foresee that being an issue. And then in terms of diversity, I just want to always make sure, especially because it's an online format, that we understand that there are going to be a number of different personalities and identities that are going to be a part of this class. And my only thing is that we respect and accept everybody in this course. And always maintain respect with everybody when we're having conversations on the discussion boards, or if we end up, having communication via office hours, whether it's among yourselves, whether it's me to you or you to me, just making sure we're maintaining that respect for one another. And lastly, if you need any ADA accessibility support, make sure you reach out to CAST, and they'll reach out to me to make sure we're getting the support that you need. In terms of late assignments, I rarely accept those, but I know we're kind of, living in different times right now. There's a lot of different things going on. And I also understand the fact that this course is not the only thing going on in your life. So if something does come up, as long as you communicate with me, I'm usually willing to work with you as best I can. I mean, obviously we're not going to do extremes, and if you miss assignments from week 1 and 2 and you're trying to turn them in at the end of the semester, that's not going to work. But normally I'm trying to do my best to kind of find that middle ground. So as long as you're communicating with me, we can figure something out. Grade appeals, I have a 24/7 policy. You have to wait 24 hours before you start yelling at me, and then you have 7 days after that to reach out to me. So that's a total of 8 days there. ethics and academic dishonesty. So throughout the semester, I will be emphasizing to you all how available I am for whatever you need. I may take a minute, metaphorically speaking, to get back to you, but I really want to make sure that I have that open line of communication with you all. That way, if there's any issues that are coming up, I can help you address them. If you're not doing as well on your discussion boards as you would like, we can kind of figure out what that issue is head on early so that we can fix that issue. I say all that because I don't ever want you to feel like you're in a position where you have to do anything dishonest or unethical in this course, whether it's plagiarizing or anything along those lines. So if you have an issue early on, just reach out to me, and that way we can take care of it as quickly as possible. And that leads into the next point about student and instructor communication. Like I said, I'm giving you a number of different ways that you can get a hold of me, and even if my office hours don't work with your schedule, I'm always happy and willing to figure out another day and time that would work. And lastly, expectations for work. I know a lot of folks obsess over grades. My big thing is grad school is much different than undergrad. At this point, you've surpassed a lot of people in terms of reaching up for that next level of education. And so for me, it's less about checking boxes and hitting scores to get a grade. And for me, it's how you're engaging with the material, how you're interacting with your classmates, how you're interacting with me, the effort that I see and the connections that I see you making between the material and what you're putting into your paper, the effort you put into your leadership demonstration. All of those things mean more to me in terms of how well you're doing in the course. So as long as you are putting in that effort and engaging with the material and engaging with your classmates, no one should have to really worry about their grade, and you should do fine in this class. Now, in terms of the assignments, your grade is made up of 4 things. Primarily, it's made up of these Blackboard discussions. So 50 points apiece, 25 for your original post, and then you need to respond to at least 2 classmates, and so they're 25 points each for those. The only way that you'll miss points on your discussion post are for 2 primary reasons, at least so far since I've been teaching this class. 1, your responses and or your original post is way too short. I don't like giving a specific word count, but just make sure you're giving a substantive answer. And 2, if you're not responding to enough of your classmates, so you're not hitting the minimum requirement. Now, if you respond like 2 longer responses to your classmates is sufficient, but if you want to write a little bit shorter, but you want to respond to 4 classmates, you're welcome to do that as well. So it's really up to you on how you want to handle that. The next big chunk of your grade is a leadership demonstration. Essentially, think about this as if we were in class. Usually what I do is we have the introduction on the first day of class. The second week of class, I'll lead the class, go over some of the main points from the readings for that week, have some sort of lecture, maybe an activity, or show a video, and then kind of connect the 2. There's enough, have like different discussion questions, and essentially I'm leading the class that week. After that, students will usually group up and teach one of the weeks, for the next 6 weeks after that. You're going to be doing something similar. So essentially, you will choose certain readings from the course, and then you're going to lead the discussion, but you're going to film it, upload it to YouTube, and then put that link in where you're submitting your leadership demonstration on Blackboard. So it's completely up to you on what readings you want to choose. You can choose any of either of the 2 textbooks that we have. You can choose any of the additional articles that I posted. And I was fortunate enough that I found a communication theory textbook that I think is really helpful in understanding kind of some of the concepts that I'm going over, but also mostly for your final paper. You can choose something from there as well. So it's really up to you. If you find something you really like, choose that, and it's up to you on how you want to do it. I've had some students that just kind of prop up their phone and record themselves talking and going over kind of the main points. I've had some students who get their whole family involved or get some friends involved and do activities and things like that to go over some of these concepts. It is completely and totally up to you on how you want to handle your leadership demonstration. Class participation should be an easy freebie for everybody. As long as I can see you participating in class, it should be an easy 100-point little buffer for you. And lastly, we have your final paper. So for your final paper, here's what I'm expecting. 10 to 12 pages. You need to have 5 to 8 sources, and 2 of those must be academic journal articles. And it needs to be properly formatted, either MLA or APA format. And here is a basic gist of how I want you to think about this paper, because I know people hear 10 to 12 pages and they freak out because, for a lot of folks that haven't been to school in a while, or just in general, maybe writing wasn't a big part of like their undergrad. And 10 to 12 pages can feel like a lot, especially in 8 weeks. But if you think about it in these 3 parts, it might be a little bit easier for you. So essentially what I suggest is you should be writing about 3.5 pages for part 1, 3.5 pages for part 2, probably about 1 to 2 pages for the second part. Then you have your introduction, your conclusion, and then kind of your transition sentences, and that should take you to about 10 pages. But essentially for part 1, you choose a theory or a strategy. Part 2, you choose an artifact or a text, and then the third one, you kind of merge those together. And here's the example that I give. Usually when my mom will ask me, or a family member will ask me what I'm working on, what research I'm doing, I'll give them kind of like the general idea of what theory I'm working with. And they give me that look like they're really bored about what I just talked about. And so I said, okay, well, let me find a way for you to figure out what this theory is, or some way for you to make sense of it that relates to you. So like with my mom, we watch a lot of the same TV shows, so I will pick a TV show. Let's say she really likes Grey's Anatomy, and I'm familiar with Grey's Anatomy, so I'll say, well, if you're talking about conflict resolution, or if you're talking about leadership presence, according to this textbook, it says that you should have X, Y, and Z to have good, strong leadership presence. And if you remember in Grey's Anatomy on that episode when this person said this or this person did that, they did X, Y, and Z. That was okay, but they could have improved that by doing blank, blank, and blank, right? Then I've grabbed the material, applied it to something that she's familiar with, and made sense of it. That's exactly what I want you to do. You can choose anything from, essentially the same thing goes for your leadership demonstration. You can choose anything from Denning, Lee, the theory, the communication theory textbook that I have up online. That's the part where I think it'll be really useful for you, because I think when it comes to this paper, it becomes a lot easier to work with a theory than a strategy. But you choose that theory, and in part 1, all you do is talk about that theory and explain it, or that strategy. If it's leadership presence, you talk about that. Don't talk about the second part, the artifact or the text set. In part 1, it is just about the theory. Part 2 is when you talk about that artifact. So if we're using that same example, part 1, I'm just talking about leadership presence. Part 2, all I would do is give a brief synopsis of what Grey's Anatomy is, who are some of the main characters, and at the end of that section, I talk a little bit about that specific episode, so that way I don't have to get into too many details in part 3. But I don't talk about the theory in part 2. And then finally in part 3, what I do is maybe find 3 to 5 examples from that episode, and I use those examples to explain parts of leadership presence. That's what you should be doing for your final paper. And that's just one example, but there's a number of different ways. I know I gave a TV example, but some people choose case study. There's some people who choose political speeches. There are a number of different artifacts or texts that you can use. And if you want to run your ideas by me, I am more than happy to kind of have a conversation with you about some of your ideas for your paper. So that's it. That's the course. It's like I said, it's your Blackboard discussion. It's your leadership demonstration. It's your final paper. You also obviously have your class participation. But if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask. You have a number of ways you can get a hold of me. But I'm excited for the semester. If you have any questions, just reach out to me. And I hope that you are as excited to take this course as I am to teach it.